Hey guys, happy live. Super excited. Love our Wednesdays together. Just as a reminder, remember, none of this is medical advice. I am not a doctor, nor do I want to be. I'm a nutritionist, so I'm looking at everything in view of, the body's needs for nourishment, and make sure that you take the information here and apply it to yourself, do your own research, talk to your doctor, whatever the common sense steps are, but nothing is to treat or diagnose or prescribe or anything like that. We're just talking about things for education and inspiration only. But that being said, just let's get into these questions. Okay, let's see. Where'd they go? Sometimes I lose them. There's just a couple. Okay. There's two. Okay. Hey, Jess, I would like to submit a question for tonight's live. Thank you. Question. I have an extreme oversensitivity to cacao and coffee. If I consume only a tiny amount, I can't fall asleep for days at a row. I sleep bad for weeks and have to take sleeping pills to be able to sleep. I also get heart palpitations that also last for weeks after, and my appetite suffers hugely because of this. I don't consume cacao or coffee anymore because it totally wrecks my sleep, but I would love to be able to eat chocolate or drink a bit of coffee. At all before the oversensitivity happened, but I was in a lot of chronic stress at the time. Do you know why my body is reacting like this and how it can be solved? Thank you. So usually my first guess comes down to like minerals and also B vitamins. A lot of people who go under stress get very depleted in B vitamins. And then what happens is if they don't restore the B vitamins, they continue to be more sensitive to stress. Sometimes the stressors being like cocoa or cacao or coffee. So remember that coffee does cause you to lose specifically vitamin B1, but also it can have you lose vitamin B2. A lot of people who have a lot of stress or are under a lot of stress have lost a lot of B1 or are very B1 deficient. This is thiamine. So B vitamins come to mind, as do just minerals in general, magnesium, sodium, potassium, because heart palpitations are often potassium, but can also be like magnesium, sodium, those types of things. So if it were me, I'd be focusing on lowering stress and also replenishing minerals and replenishing B vitamins. And then I would revisit like 6 weeks to 8 weeks later after like focusedly replenishing that and seeing if that helps, because that's a real true stress reaction, adrenaline reaction. Hi Jess, I'm in South Africa, so I can't make the live. Welcome. Thanks for all you share. Was wondering your thoughts on taking curcumin supplement that has phosphatidylcholine added. Advised to take it as an anti-inflammatory, but super expensive. Wondering if really necessary. Thank you. I don't like phosphatidylcholine. I don't like it as a supplement because it can actually excite the nervous system. There's a lot of reasons why I don't like it. I could dive into the science, but I just don't like it. I prefer getting choline from food-based sources like really high quality eggs, things like that. I like curcumin for certain things. There's a lot of people that say it's estrogenic. However, it also has some anti-iron effects. So I think it just depends on context. I wouldn't just pop curcumin all the time, but there's a reason why a lot of people who have very inflammatory conditions see a lot of benefit with curcumin. I think it has a lot to do with iron overload. So that's just kind of like, I'm neutral on a lot of supplements. You guys know, there are certain supplements that I don't like, but there are certain supplements that I'm just like, why? Like, let's just try to get it from food. But I can't say like either way if I'm like yay or nay. There are certain things that I just think are kind of useless. Or should just be taken for specific reasons. Do you think castor oil on eyelashes is a good idea for growth? It can be. I've used castor oil before. I personally think progesterone oil, vitamin E, it's like my magic balm, I guess we could call it, like magic serum, because it really does help my eyebrows grow, eyelashes grow, helps like keep my face nice and youthful. So thanks as always. Do you cycle Shilajit or do you take it continually? I cycle all my supplements. I mean, sometimes if I'm like if I'm doing like an experiment or I'm working on like a protocol design or something like that, I take my little supplement organizer that I get on Amazon and put my supplements in for each day so I don't forget. Or I'm like, I do like cycles where I'm like, okay, for 28 days, I'm going to take all these for a specific purpose. And so that might include Shilajit. Sorry, I forgot to plug my microphone in. Hold on. Sorry. Showed you guys my double chin. So I don't take Shilajit every day, to be honest, though, but that's like pretty common with all supplements unless I'm on a cycle and I'm like doing some specific testing for certain things, or I develop weird protocols and stuff like that, or I just do things for research purposes. But I would probably say like I'll probably take 5 Shilajit 3 times a week or something like that. Or like I do it for preparing for something. Like if I'm going to do a podcast interview or something like that, then I'm going to pop some Shilajit. Or I'm going to have a stressful day, like I'll pop some Shilajit. But it does give me a lot of energy. Sometimes I'm just like, whoa. Did you take 100 years for your bumbleroot powder to come in? Sheesh. They ran out again. I have it on like a subscription, and I only got one of my subscriptions. And then I was like, wait, where is it? I'm out. And sure enough, I think they're out. Yeah, they always run out. And it is. Sheesh is right. Sheesh. Sheesh kebab. Are there any dangers to infrared thermometers? A lot of people I've seen are trying to avoid them. Infrared thermometers. Oh, like the ones that they're like taking your temperature with? I'm sure. I mean, can we imagine? But I mean, I don't get exposed to it enough to just care that much, but I'm sure. I mean, come on. Can you talk more about your gut healing protocol? Heard you talk about it a little on Mito Life Radio, and that's definitely me. Yeah, I'm actually developing a gut protocol program. It should come out like March, April-ish, like spring-ish. Yeah, so I am actually working on a full program that will be the protocol. But in the meantime, it just kind of depends on your situation. So some people don't know their disposition at all. Like they don't know anything that they've struggled with in the past. They've never gotten like gut tests. So I just always recommend like take your history and figure out what do you possibly struggle with. And then if you're like, I don't know, like fungus, parasite, like I have no idea, then you just kind of want to build a good terrain. So what you do is if you have a lot of endotoxin symptoms or overload, like bacterial overload symptoms, it's probably a good idea to do a little bit of removal, like weeding almost, you can call it. I'm not a big fan of antibiotics. I know like a lot of people in the RAP community are a big fan, but I just think that too many people are already like over antibioticed, I guess we can call it. And wiping out a bunch of bacteria just randomly, like a third of your gut bacteria, I don't really always think creating space to allow like other things to come in is a really good idea. And it always like welcomes yeast to grow where it doesn't belong. And I just don't like doing that, especially if you already have like a very estrogen dominant disposition. You're still struggling with like iron overload, other issues. You don't want to just wipe out your microbiota and then just be like, welcome everyone, and they just grow back however they want. So I like to use like more like herbal antibacterials first, do a little bit of like weeding there. If that helps with bloating, that helps with your, temps, let's say. You just want to keep things mobilizing. So you want to make sure you're having like regular bowel movements. You're binding the endotoxin with like raw carrot, bamboo shoots, mushrooms. I like triphala powder. And then like if you are constipated, like making sure things are moving. I like to use cascara, but everyone's a little different. And then doing a little bit of some antimicrobials, gentle. You're not trying to like kill everything. And then once you feel a little bit better there, at that point, I do think reestablishing a terrain is a good idea. I have certain probiotics that I like to use, but everyone's a little different. So it really depends. But I think a spore-based probiotic tends to treat everyone pretty well. But there are specific like bifido strains you want. And then certain like ancient strains of bacteria that a lot of people have lost, like Akkermansia, soil-based I don't even like to call them probiotics because they're just bacteria that we would be exposed to regularly if we're eating like dirt on our food. And then just getting a little bit of variety in the fibers you're consuming. So gentle fibers, I always think are better. Making sure you're doing a variety of like squashes, fruits, a little bit of like different types of cooked vegetables, not a lot. They're condiments, people. Even if you can do a little fermented foods, like a bite at meals, just trying to varietize the types of fibers you're getting in your diet. But I will be laying out this out as a protocol for people, but pretty much like the goal overall is to rebalance the microbiota so that it's benefiting us and it's as close to our ancient or native strains as possible, all the while supporting our metabolism, which is very possible. We just kind of have to figure out what that looks like for us. And it kind of starts with, getting the bacteria under control first and making sure our transit time is good, like making sure we're pooping regularly. And then if we have to dig any deeper, that's when we start to, work on it a little bit and start to tweak it. Hi, Jess. Thanks for all you do. Is L-theanine safe for pregnancy? I'm honestly not sure. That's not something I've checked into. I know it has an anti-estrogen action, so I would double check, do research. But yeah, I am honestly not sure. And whenever you're not sure, be safe over sorry. Hi, Jess. How responsive are temps and pulses to small changes? For example, do you notice your temp drop one night after a short sleep? Yeah, usually. So I will usually see the day before, my habits the day before affect the next day. So for example, if I have a beer, I had a beer on Sunday night and Monday, yesterday, it was yesterday? No, that's 2 days ago. Sorry, I don't even know what day it is. Monday, I was just I was kind of cold all day and I was that beer was not a good idea. So that's just an example of, I usually get affected the day after. But some people see their temps and pulses change right away. Some people see it a couple days later. So it just depends. I know people that are really sensitive to stress that sometimes they will work out on let's say Monday and their temps and pulses are affected until Thursday. So it just kind of depends on who you are, where your body's at. But yeah, I've seen all types of situations. What benefits do you get from using aspirin and what should you take with it? I think you said vitamin K was one of them. I personally see a lot of anti-inflammatory effects. I used to have really bad KP or keratosis pilaris, which has pretty much gone away. Hair loss is sometimes decreased. For me, it was definitely decreased. I don't get any cramps, whereas before, I didn't get that bad of cramps, but I did definitely feel my uterus contracting. Now I don't really feel it at all. So I don't really notice crazy results in regards to I'm seeing it on a day-to-day basis. I'm more just taking it for overall what it's doing that's unseen, the protective effects personally. I take it with vitamin K and I don't take it every day. Like I say with all supplements, I'm just not good at taking them every day. I wish I was, I guess. But sometimes I think it's actually a better approach to probably not take certain concentrated amounts of things every day. So I don't know. I probably take it twice a week or 3 times a week. I've been eating pro-metabolically, daily carrot, and supplementing with vitamin E, beef liver, shilajit, K2 for several months. Now, and recently a spore-based probiotic, as well as by cheeks, as well as dry scalp. Any thoughts as to why or other tips on clearing those? Are you talking about maybe skin by cheeks? Are you breaking out? Let's see. I'll look to see if I'm not really sure what the question was, but dry scalp. I would just look into is it something that you're doing nutritionally? Is it just a seasonal change? And sometimes people are just overdoing it on everything. They're just doing too much all the time. I just think a balanced approach doing food and just being very cautious with supplements is always a good idea. I know there are people in the community that go crazy with supplements, but I always just take a more conservative approach because you just never know. It's not you're can scan your body and see what's going on. Had coffee with coconut milk, maple syrup, and collagen and had such bad diarrhea for multiple days. Why do you think this could be? I'm not sure. Some people have really bad bile issues. Their gallbladder is really backed up, and coffee does stimulate bile flow quite a bit. And anytime bile's flowing, oftentimes it can result in fat malabsorption, you feel your poop is just floating, or you have diarrhea. If anyone's ever taken too much ox bile, they know what bile diarrhea is. But I don't know. I couldn't tell you why. That's just a guess. I've heard you talk about how some women get strong symptoms of estrogen detox when starting to eat more, pro-metabolic, or taking vitamin E. Could this show up as late period? Yeah, it can usually show up as an imbalanced period overall. Remember, guys, that when we're doing something one way for a long time and then we switch, sometimes it can just the body just goes, whoa. Now, obviously, if our period doesn't come back or it goes away and doesn't come back for a long time, okay, that's a cause for concern. We need to look a little deeper. But if it's simply like a late period or just like a late, which is always a late ovulation, you guys. Remember, we never have a period that shows up late without having an ovulation that shows up late. Because ovulation, like post-ovulation, should only last 11 to 14 days. Rarely does it last any longer than that. So usually we have to look back 2 weeks and say, why is our period late? Well, our ovulation was late. Why was it late? Like, what was I doing 2 weeks ago? So yeah, some women, like their periods do kind of shift for a little while. Their cycles kind of go crazy. How do you feel about rectal temperature readings? Will it give efficient tracking? Yeah, anything that's going to be like core body temperature, whatever is the most accurate for you. I've had problems with like armpit readings. I personally, like, my armpit often is like very much colder than my oral temp, unless I really like stick my thermometer like deep into my armpit, which kind of hurts. So I choose to do oral temperature, but I think it's just whatever works for anyone. Tips for pregnancy nutrition besides for what you mentioned in IGTVs. I like to read the book Nourishing Traditions for Baby and Mama by, what's her name? Sally Fallon. Deep Nutrition by Catherine Sheenahan. And then Real Food for Pregnancy by Lily Nichols. I think they all kind of have a carb fear. Like, I just kind of ignore people when they have a carb fear. I'm like, glucose is energy and you're literally building a baby. So why are we afraid of carbohydrates? But a lot of the other information in there can apply pretty well. It's pretty much like, when it comes down to it, we just want to make sure we're getting that super nutrient dense food. Now, get cold hands after drinking coffee, even if having it after breakfast and with sugar. Should I avoid it for now? Yeah, if it raises stress, then that's a good sign. We want to listen to our bodies. When I go through really stressful situations, I do not drink caffeine. When I say situations, I mean like seasons of life where I'm like waking up, got to get to work, like got to get started with my day, like boom, 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 got to get a workout in like from 11 to 11:45. Like, I have a very strict schedule. Like when I'm, coming out with a program or something like that, my schedule is pretty tight and it's kind of back to back to back, pretty stressful. I don't drink a lot of coffee on those days because I do get cold hands and cold feet. I just feel too anxious. Can matte blackburns dissolve at all? Be good for cystic acne scars? I don't know. It's one of those things where I couldn't tell you, but I think that vitamin E is very effective for scarring. Like, I used to have some scars like on my forehead and stuff that I've faded with vitamin E. But yeah, I never thought of systemic enzymes. I mean, if it can dissolve scars on the inside, it possibly could dissolve scars on the outside. Why not? Been pro-metabolic for 7 months now. Wasn't balancing blood sugar very well, so upped my fats 2 months ago. And this month had an entire flood of estrogen symptoms. Thoughts? Yeah, I don't think I don't know what your question is regarding like, is it the fats that are the problem or like you had an estrogen symptoms? But if you were feeling like you were all over the place regarding blood sugar, that could have possibly been also stressful. And so by adding fats in and balancing your blood sugar a little more, that could have resulted in more detox. Also, like, remember that fats do bind to toxins. So sometimes doing too low fat can be a problem for some people. There are some applications where a higher fat diet makes sense. Does that mean low carb? No, but like a little bit more fat could be a good thing. So I would say like wait and see, I guess. If it continues to be something that you're just like, I'm feeling worse, like I'm constantly feeling worse, maybe the fat's not working. But at this point, with the information I know, I think it could be a good thing, or it could possibly be something that's not working. So at that point, you just have to give it time to see. But it sounds like it's possibly a good thing. How to do well-cooked mushrooms? Can you just cook them in a pan? A lot of people like argue about this. They say to boil them for at least an hour. Sometimes I just cook them really well in a pan. When I have time, I'll boil them for a while, but I don't always have time for that. So yeah, we just want to cook them really well because mushrooms can have pretty toxic compounds on them. Do you take oil of oregano with food or first thing in the morning? Just kind of randomly, like, I guess like after breakfast, a lot of times. I don't really like to take antimicrobials without food. They make me kind of nauseous. So I usually take them like after meals. That's tends to be the most effective for me. And I've tried different things. Like I've tried on an empty stomach, upon waking. I just take too much stuff upon waking. So like trying to get another thing upon waking is too much for me. So yeah, I usually take mine like after breakfast. Do you have any suggestions for snoring? I'm not typically a snorer, but have been worse lately. Yeah, mouth taping. If we're mouth breathing, that's usually the problem. And, just kind of asking ourselves, like, what's maybe contributing to mouth breathing. But yeah, like Somnifix or just regular mouth tape can be very effective. If I'm only drinking with thirsty, I'm only drinking around 30 ounces of water per day. In addition to a glass of milk and glass of OJ, should I try to be getting more water in? I can't tell you yes or no. Like maybe just try to drink more water, make it a point to drink more water and pay attention if you feel better or if you're peeing a lot or if your hands and feet are cold. It's like one of those things where we sometimes just have to experiment. If we're worried about something, then we should experiment a little bit. But usually like I listen to my body because I do have thirst some days where I'm much thirstier than other days. And so I know my body's going to tell me when I need water, but sometimes hydration signals are messed up. So sometimes with hydration, you do have to play around and see and make a point to drink a little bit more water and see if you feel better. I can only get vitamin E capsules with only D-alpha tocopherol, but no other mixed ones. It's also derived from soy. The other option with mixed tocopherols contains sunflower oil. What's the lesser evil? I don't think either ones are lesser evil. I think it's just try both, baby, and see what works better. A small amount of sunflower oil is probably not going to make a big difference. But I think it's whatever works better for you. I personally, when I take soy-derived vitamin E, I get incredibly nauseous, like incredibly nauseous. So I have to take sunflower-derived vitamin E. So, it just depends, I think, on your situation. Dairy and egg intolerance currently and dislike seafood while building back metabolism. It is okay to have meat for most meals until I can tolerate dairy and eggs again. Just make sure you're balancing it out with bone broth and gelatin and collagen pretty frequently because a lot of meat can be super inflammatory. It's just really high in like L-methionine and cysteine, and those can be inflammatory amino acids in too high amounts without being balanced out with those other more anti-inflammatory amino acids. So I would just like be pounding gelatinous foods. Always have higher pulses before bowel movements. Is there anything I could do to avoid this? Oftentimes it's endotoxin that's the problem. Like our body needs to poop those toxins out. I've heard this plenty of times. Like I've heard people tell me that they have like heart palpitations before they poop. They get like chills all over their body before they poop. This is a sign that like there's something really toxic the body's trying to get out, in my opinion. I don't, of course, like they've gotten everything else ruled out and checked out, but oftentimes if we're struggling with hormonal issues, we have stuff that our body's trying to get out very quickly. And that's a good thing. Like, we're eliminating those metabolic byproducts, all those toxins, and then our metabolism is affected accordingly. Any advice for a family member with COVID, sorry, I won't say the word, that needs extra lung support, doing tons of oregano, elderberry, and all the carbs? A lot of the herbs that are really supportive for respiratory health are kind of sold out right now. I'm trying to think of even like, some people report like ion biome being a good supplement, like respiratory wise, or like Xylaclear, like those types of things. But it sounds like you're doing all the right things, and you don't want to go crazy with all the stuff that's going to like slam the immune system. You also want to, build it back up in the sense of just like overall body support. I personally love, with any time, like you always want those electrolytes, minerals, sodium, potassium, like broths, things like that. That's when like Epsom salt baths can come in handy, at least for me personally, getting like sweats in pretty regularly. And then activated charcoal I find is very helpful, at least for me whenever I'm not feeling good, because oftentimes the gut is affected. when it comes to like even colds. And I find like anything that's going to absorb endotoxin makes a big difference. Hi, I'm having a hard time accepting my C-peptide being at zero point 0.4 fasting. Do you think it's possible to regrow beta cells so I don't have to be on insulin / metformin forever? Do you have a type 1 or type 2? I'm just not clear on what it is. But when it comes to beta cells, there's still so much research to be done. From what I found, like that's not my specialty at all. In my research, I've come across like a few people talking about how oftentimes the pancreas is affected by polyunsaturated fats by quite a lot. Polyunsaturated fats are really hard on the beta cells, whereas pregnenolone actually shows some possible effects of like regeneration, or at least showing some positive effects on the pancreas. So maybe look a little bit more at Ray Peat's stuff, like just search type 1 diabetes, Ray Peat. But I've read a few things in passing in his research talking about pregnenolone and polyunsaturated fats and the connection, but that is definitely not my specialty. If you already don't follow Isaac Pullman, he talked a lot about diabetic nutrition as well. Been using Progesterone to ease elevated estrogen symptoms. Is there anything I should know about using this? Really helping with my panic attacks. I mean, make sure you are like informed, read the research that they provide. But like anything you should know about using this, it's just important to be really nourished. And if you're not already if you are in Fully Nourished or Mend Your Cycle, I do have educational lessons just talking about bioidentical progesterone and just like educating on what to remember when on it. I want to start systemic enzymes. I'm also taking a sporebiotic. Should I do the enzyme in the morning and the sporebiotic at night? I know the enzyme should be taken away from everything. I think you should just do whatever works for you. I don't really think it matters that much, but if you use systemic enzymes, if you're trying to get them to absorb in the bloodstream, oftentimes they're taken on an empty stomach away from food, or they'll just act like digestive enzymes. What causes gallstones, and can you get rid of them on your own? Well, that is the debate, right? And there's a lot of different people who say gallstones are caused by all different types of things. I was even reading on like ip6research.net today that it's like an inositol deficiency. I was doing a YouTube video on inositol, that's why. But then, some people will say it's oxalates, and a lot of people will say like, stop eating high oxalate foods. But in reality, yeast causes oxalates, so it's a gut issue. Some people will say it's calcium issue and you need more vitamin K. So there's just some different, and some people will say they're like parasites, that the body has like covered and protected. So there's so many different theories out there, but it's hard to know. Some people will use like castor oil packs and coffee enemas and things like that to kind of like dilate their bile ducts. But I personally haven't looked into it in regards to actually gallstones and how safe it is. So that would be something to like look into on your own. But I'm sure there are people that have some ideas or have attempted that on their own. But some people, they're too large to get rid of on their own, and they need to get them surgically removed. Lost myself. You guys know. Shoot. Oh, can you explain the benefits of aspirin? I vaguely understand, but not really. There's a lot of different possible benefits. The prostaglandin blocking, aromatase inhibiting. It also protects against lipid peroxidation. So that's like oxidization of fats. So when fats are oxidizing, that causes a lot of like metabolic distress as a whole, of bad metabolic byproducts. That's like the whole reason why PUFAs are so not great for the metabolism. Some people even say it protects against iron in the liver. So it has like all these different mechanisms of action. So yeah, it's kind of like this long list. I was intrigued because of its fertility benefit. I'm taking 2 a day, 1 every 12 hours, basically 1 at breakfast and 1 at dinner. Is that good? Some people will say that that's unless you're taking vitamin K2, that might thin the blood too much, but everyone has like a different opinion on that. I think it's, whatever you decide is best based on your research. But yeah, there are actually a few IVF clinics that at least my clients have worked with that have used them in their like kind of plan. Does skincare with borage seed oils or CO2 extract, sunflower seed extract seem like too much PUFA for the skin? I'm not really sure. I just personally don't use PUFA on my skin at all because it ages the skin. So it's not for me, like, is it good or is it bad? I just personally don't want to put anything on my skin that reacts negatively with the sun and also possibly ages me faster than necessary. Do you like your clients to work without any supplements for the first few months and focus on food lifestyle? Yeah, it is ideal if that's like really, but again, it's really a context-based situation because some people are so, like, the people that I work with are not like, no, I'm just like kind of not feeling good. I take on like the most complicated cases. And so these people are usually feeling awful. They have horrible symptoms that some people can't possibly comprehend. So at that point, some people do need supplements, but sometimes those are the most sensitive people that really can't handle any supplements. So again, it just kind of depends on the person. I do not think supplements are necessary until you've gotten the foundation of like food and nutrition. I really don't. Because if you're not doing the nutrition or the foundational foods, supplements aren't going to do anything. They might even make you worse, So I do like a very minimal supplement approach. Hi, Jess. Thanks for all you do. Is there optimal time to eat a raw carrot salad? Does it lose effectiveness if I prep days ahead with vinegar oil? Not necessarily, but I do find that if you do vinegar oil too early, it really breaks down the fiber, which is the most important part. So if it's possible to soak the shredded carrot in water and then just make the salad really quickly, that's usually more optimal. I don't really think there's an optimal time. I usually do it right before lunch just because it's easiest and I find that works best for me. But I don't necessarily think there's like a time that's best. I think just the time that you get it in consistently is probably more important. What brand do you recommend for vitamin E supplements? You guys know I like Metabolic PUFA Protect, probably the best. I do like Unique E, but it is soy derived, so some people get nauseous from it. Ultimate E by Thorne is usually okay. Life Extension, I think it's called like Superfood E or something. And then Swanson has a Real Food E. They have multiple different ones, so don't get confused. There is one that's derived from sunflower oil and doesn't have any soybean oil in it. So there's some options, but I have a post on my Instagram that is all about vitamin E, and I have all those brands written down. Do you think healing the metabolism could help with social anxiety or awkwardness, blushing? Probably. I mean, progesterone usually plays a big role in confidence, as does gut health. So I feel like people's personalities completely change when they get rid of their estrogen dominance and ovulate again, and then also get their guts under control because the neurotransmitters play a large role in just like our personality expression. Also wondering if you think that if I got pregnant, it could help regrow beta cells. I've heard this before, that the baby can produce stem cells to help that. I'm honestly not sure. That's not like my area of expertise. Again, it makes me wonder about if it's the effects of progesterone that are actually affecting, like lowering the amount of stress on someone's body. But again, like I'm not really sure. That's not my area of expertise. Best way to consume liver. It's just the way that you're going to get it in. I mean, everyone's like freaking out over me doing raw liver. It's just because I'm lazy and it's easy to just swallow it very quickly. I don't really care how you get it in as long as you get it in. But it's really like how you're going to do it consistently. Some people just take the capsules because they know they're not going to eat it. Some people like to do the raw liver. Some people like to get it ground into their meat. Some people like to cook it and eat it for dinner, so it's just kind of like whatever you are going to do, that's what you should do. What are some supplements you basically put everyone on? Vitamin E, magnesium, etc. I mean, like pretty commonly vitamin E, vitamin K2, magnesium, like an adrenal cocktail, like sodium, potassium, A lot of times Shilajit, just to kind of like bind to toxins and metals, like pretty gently. What else? And that's really it. Raw carrot salad. That's usually like foundational. And then from there, it just really depends on the person. No person is really the same, but those are pretty common. I actually have a very like food first approach. I'm definitely one to recommend royal jelly over like a synthetic B vitamin supplement. You know what I mean? So it just depends on the person and also their goals, like where they're starting and what their goals are. And then some people are already working with a doctor, so we kind of like come alongside. So it just kind of depends on the situation. But I like a very conservative approach to supplements. Prostaglandins are a biatch. I'm doing the work, but any temporary relief. Ginger, castor oil packs, and like you guys know, I'm a big fan of coffee enemas. I know everyone like freaks out when they hear that, but they make such a difference in the short term. Like they truly do. And when I was first like started my healing journey, I didn't know anything that I talk about now. Like I wasn't into metabolic eating, did not know anything, but I did do coffee enemas pretty regularly. And I feel like that is one thing that made a big difference. And now I've learned that they help pull stored estrogen from the tissue and store it. They obviously chelate iron because coffee chelates iron. So it makes me wonder if that was part of their positive effect for me. They were taking off such a toxic burden. But ginger is very helpful for prostaglandins. It's actually been shown in research to be very popular or very helpful. And so is vitamin E. Where to get B1? I find it hard to get that one up there, even though my other Bs are usually good. Some people can't absorb it very well. Look at the research on allithiamine. It's done by Dr. Shoot, I can't remember his name now. Let me look at it really quick. I just ordered his book. And yeah, allithiamine, some people can't absorb, hold on. They can't absorb regular thiamine. They need the fat-soluble version of thiamine. So that is one. Gosh, I can't find his name. Yeah, just search allithiamine. And, his website's called Hormones Matter. And I can't remember the dude's name, but hormonesmatter.com. And he talks about allithiamine, the fat-soluble version of B1. I feel awesome my whole cycle, but then on my period, I feel dead. Working on minerals and fundamentals all cycle long, but anything I can do to help short term during my period, I feel so depleted. Well, ask yourself what you're doing during the luteal phase. Like, are you pushing too hard? I don't know what your workout routine is. Like, are you working out at all? Some people need to chill out on the workouts like a week before their period because your sugar needs and your magnesium needs go up quite a bit, like a couple days leading up to your period and then all throughout. So, if you're utilizing your minerals for those workouts, you're not saving up the ones you need for your period. So sometimes it's just the need for slowing down a little bit. If you're already doing that and that's not working, figuring out like how much sugar you need. A lot of women have extra sugar needs, extra magnesium needs, extra potassium needs, and extra sodium needs. So those are kind of the 4 things that I focus in on. And then like making sure you're getting plenty of just calories overall. A lot of women lose their appetite on their period, and that would be a sign that blood sugar is really imbalanced. Or if you get a lot of cravings pre-period, that's a sign that your body has certain nutritional needs that need to be met. But those are kind of some things I would like experiment around with. Hello, Jess. Why would the body consistently undergo anovulation as opposed to amenorrhea? Secondly, does estrogen alone maintain the uterine lining before it sheds in anovulation? So estrogen thickens the uterine lining, whereas progesterone kind of thins it or tonifies it, I guess you could say. And so they work together to kind of prepare the uterine lining properly, but estrogen will build it. So that's why we can still bleed if we don't have progesterone. It's because estrogen is responsible for building up the uterine lining. And then why would the body consistently undergo anovulation as opposed to amenorrhea? Well, I truly think a lack of a bleed is stressful. So the body prefers to bleed over not to bleed. And why wouldn't it bleed if it has enough estrogen? Oftentimes, anovulation is a result of estrogen dominance, whereas amenorrhea is a result of extreme stress. Whereas anovulation often has stress involved, yes, but amenorrhea is usually to the extreme. So I think I think it's really what your body is like predetermined to do, probably your hormones and just your genetic predisposition. Probably also has to do with your body fat percentage, but not always. A lot of people will say like, oh, if you lost your period, you're underweight. That's not always the case, but it can be. Also, like, where's your thyroid function at? Is your thyroid function just slightly suboptimal, or is it really suboptimal? Is your adrenaline super high? A lot of women with amenorrhea have lost it because they're over-exercising, under-eating, not getting the right nutrients, like eating a very nutrient poor diet. There's a lot of factors there. Whereas oftentimes women with anovulation, you're finding are similar to women with amenorrhea, but not as severe. That's not always the case though. Some women, I think it's just a genetic predisposition. Like me, I never lost my period ever. But I totally lost my ovulation. I had horrible thyroid issues. I bled for weeks at a time. Like, I had a lot of hormonal issues due to low progesterone, but I personally never lost my period. And there are a lot of women that I've worked with who never lost their period. Where would you recommend starting for balancing electrolytes? I have random fluid retention. Some days I'll pee constantly or even wake up to go. And some days I'm fine, not sure how to regulate it. I think doing trace mineral drops and doing sea salt water in the morning with like some lemon and warm water, not a lot, just a little cup of warm water can be helpful. Eating within 30 minutes of waking as the priority, and then coconut water. I think like food-based sources are always better in situations where you feel kind of like your electrolyte balance is delicate, and then you kind of go on from there if supplements are necessary. But usually like starting with some simple steps. What did your diet consist of when you were healing your gut and were sensitive to most foods? I did a lot of cooked meats, like stewed meats, with like stewed carrots, stewed potatoes, maybe sweet potatoes, not a lot of green vegetable. No green vegetables, no cruciferous vegetables. I did lots of fats, lots of beef tallow, lots of cacao butter or cocoa butter, coconut oil, and ghee. Those are kind of like the 4 fats that I use the most because I know they had stearic acid in them and were butyrate producing for me. And that's the most healing to the lining of the gut. Tons of jello, tons of gelatin, and tons of like cooked fruits. So I pretty much cooked all my fruits, cooked apple, cooked pear, cooked berries. And I only did that for like probably 2 months, and then I started pushing myself to adapt to new foods. I truly don't think it's a good idea to cater to a broken system. Oftentimes we do that too long and we cause more problems rather than less. So give yourself like a couple weeks, maybe 4 to 8 weeks, and then, start trying to maybe do some like a bite of some well-cooked oats or a bite of some like really well-cooked potatoes. Like get some food in and start varietizing things. Also, I love your glasses. Thank you. I got these. These are like new blue blocking day glasses. They don't have like super amber tint like the night glasses should have, but these are what I use during the day. They were on sale for Black Friday, so they're diff eyewear. Thoughts on organic GMO-free soy sauce? If you're fine with it, it's usually fermented, so it's not a big deal. Best app to track your food. I want to make sure I'm getting enough protein a day. I like to use Chronometer and not MyFitnessPal because MyFitnessPal starts to just scream at you like, too much saturated fat. You ate way too much sugar today. And I'm just like, F off, So I like to use Chronometer because it actually helps you track a lot of your micronutrients as well. Have a baby coming up on 1 year old. She was my first girl, my first C-section. She's a blessing. My body is completely out of whack. What's the most important thing to do to get myself back to normal? I think it just starts with nourishing properly a lot of times. Like that's just the thing we're missing. And then once we like are nourishing our bodies better, we're balancing our blood sugar, then we can kind of assess like where we need to go from there. But a lot of time it's just like we got to eat every 3 to 4 hours, got to eat protein and carb, and a little bit of fat. We got to get enough sleep. Like we got to just prioritize the basics. And then some women like post C-section need a little bit more, just like to focus on maybe their breathing, their alignment, their pelvic floor, that kind of thing. Those are all things to be aware of. And that's really like anyone post-birth. I shouldn't just say C-sections. Like a lot of women post-birth like are struggling with nervous system issues or breath issues. Like they aren't taking deep breaths. They're feeling kind of anxious. And it's because a lot of times their pelvic floors maybe need some attention, or their abdominal muscles need to be built back up, those kinds of things. A week before my period, I'm so swollen, especially my stomach and hip area. Is there a way I can reduce my swelling? Well, we have to ask ourselves why. Remember, progesterone is a diuretic and estrogen can cause water retention. So for estrogen dominant, a lot of times we can feel like we retain a lot of water before our period. Hi, Jessica. How are you? I'm good. I'm wondering if it's a bad sign if lipofuscin is getting worse. I've had spots on my hands since childhood and they've gotten a bit worse. Some spots popped up on my face too. How's your stress levels doing? How's your high quality fat intake? Do you maybe need to eat a little bit more fat? How's your stress levels in regards to like just, all stressors, like gut stressors, life stressors, work stressors, like kind of going over all of those things, because sometimes we need to like eat a little bit more fat to balance out the bad fats that are coming out of our tissues, or we need to take a few more steps for like lipid peroxidation. But, sometimes as we get a little older, lipofuscin does get worse if we're not quickly dealing with those issues, which sometimes we just have to slowly deal with those issues. And then sometimes like iron overload is an issue that we need to explore further. And I highly recommend like most of the root cause protocol for that. I like Morley Robbins' approach with the root cause protocol. So those are some factors to kind of think about. But I don't know. I can't really say if it's like worse or better. Is it just like age, or are they like rapidly getting worse? And that's something that like we need to kind of assess. If the Dutch test indicates my progesterone is below the luteal range, what does that mean? And what would you recommend for increasing that? It just depends. I don't really like looking at a singular hormone alone. It's always like context. So what is everything else doing? But oftentimes if it's below the luteal range, it's that we're, I don't have it in front of me. Is it that you're not ovulating? Like, where is your progesterone? Like, is it so low that you're not ovulating? Is it indicating an ovulation without enough progesterone? Those are things we need to ask ourselves, because if we're not making enough progesterone, we need to focus on healthy ovulation. Like what I talk about in Mend Your Cycle and Fully Nourished, we need to nourish for a good ovulation so we make enough progesterone. Hey, Jess, been experiencing itching and stinging with the magnesium spray from Ancient Minerals. I've been spraying it on my lower abdomen. Does this happen to you? Sometimes it does. If it's too bad, don't do it, because oftentimes it just like makes you like you can scratch yourself and it hurts. I think it's just much better to like mix it in with some tallow or some even olive oil or coconut oil, so that it doesn't cause the stinging. And some people just don't react well to magnesium chloride. Like they just are very like sensitive to it. And it's so much easier to just make yourself a spray. Like you just dissolve magnesium flakes in hot water. And usually the oil, if the oil just makes you react to it over and over. Any suggestions for a 60-year-old man with fast growing macular degeneration? Like blue blocking glasses possibly. Is he taking fish oil? Like vitamin E would probably be, I don't know his situation, so I don't want to like say anything, but oftentimes it has a lot to do with like iron and PUFA overload and high exposure to blue light, like just watching TV, being on the phone a lot, and not having any protection. How long before one sees major benefits in health when starting a pro-metabolic diet? 6 to 12 months. It's just kind of a weird question, because it's like some things tend to improve, some things tend to not improve, but you're always like assessing is what I'm doing working for me, or do I need to like change some things up? And this just kind of like I think comes with personality. Like There's people that just like go crazy with carbs at first and they just like feel awful. And it's like, of course you feel awful. You did like something so extreme so fast. So it's like just implement some like fruit and roots into your already, like nutrient dense diet, change out your fats, like make sure your meats are good, like that kind of thing. So I don't know like how long before one sees major benefits. 6 to 12 months, possibly. Sometimes it's a little longer, sometimes it's shorter, but over time, I hear again and again from people like, that's the best change I made 5 years ago, or, finding Ray Peat was the best thing that I ever found. Like, I'm so thankful that people that are younger are finding him and stuff like that. So I don't know, for me personally, I saw a lot of benefits and, immediately, but I also like had to deal with a lot of stuff that I caused from my really bad habits beforehand. And so like, I'm really starting to see the benefits now. Like, I mean, 2.5, 3 years later, like I feel way better, but I've tweaked it to myself. Like, I don't do a lot of extreme things. I don't fall into extremes, and there's a reason for that. I find that almost everyone that falls into extremes ends up regretting it. What nutrients support healthy mucous membranes? Do you mean like mucosal lining in the gut? Or do you mean like mucosal membranes somewhere else? Like gelatin, things that are going to help build up Akkermansia. I really like Triphala powder. Sometimes apple pectin powder can be helpful. Just depends on someone's situation. Do you think that a truly healthy body should be able to slip easily into ketosis during a real survival situation? Obviously, this should be a rare occurrence, but if you had an optimal metabolism, would your body make the change without being bedridden by keto flu? Or does that only happen after forcing your body to do it repeatedly and it becomes efficient? Of course, your body can switch into ketosis if it's healthy. So many people get obsessed with ketosis, and it's just like, yeah, your body will eventually switch into ketosis. Don't worry. Like, you will eventually if you're starved enough of glucose. Do you want to force yourself there? No, but you could get there eventually as you're super derived and deprived of glucose. You go through your glycogen stores, they're done. Yeah, of course, you'll switch into ketosis. But it's not always going to feel good because your body is slowing everything down because now you're conserving energy. It's a conservation state. But yeah, like your body's going to switch into ketosis eventually or you would die. My gynecologist prescribes synthetic progesterone to me. Does synthetic progesterone hormone give a true ovulation or no? No. What's your protocol if you get sick with a cold? Usually I just let myself, first of all, rest, because that's usually what the body's trying to say to you, like, hey, chill out. But I usually do a big dose of activated charcoal. I drink a lot of broths. I try not to go without a meal unless I'm really not hungry. Some people like lose their appetite or get nauseous, and I completely understand. But if I'm hungry, I will eat. And then I usually take Epsom salt baths with bentonite clay and essential oils that open up the respiratory system, like peppermint, eucalyptus, things like that. Just remember those aren't safe for children. And yeah, usually, and then I'll take NyQuil or doxylamine succinate, which is the active antihistamine in NyQuil, so that I can like knock myself out and get a really good night's sleep. Not saying that that's good or bad. I just find that like a really good night's sleep from like 8 p.m. to like 11 p.m. just knocks it right out for me. Do you know what causes and relieves sensitive teeth? I think it's different for a lot of different people. Some people have like mineral issues, some people have bacterial issues, some people's saliva is messed up because they don't have enough fat soluble vitamins. I know for me, like leaving sugar on my teeth all day is not a good idea. That's why I rinse my mouth out after every meal. Starch can be a big one for some people. It kind of can chew through people's enamel. So yeah, I think it's just figuring out what is for you. But yeah, a lot of people who have mineral issues and vitamin K deficiency, vitamin K2 helps calcium get into the hard tissues like the bones and the teeth. And so I think some people need to focus on fat soluble vitamins. Like look at Dr. Weston A. Price's research, for example. What do you think of the bean protocol? I've seen people say it cleared their skin, but I can't imagine eating beans at every meal. I think it has a lot to do with the fiber that's binding to bile. So it's a soluble fiber. But I've seen, for example, like I read Paleo OMG's description of it, and like just reading her story, like getting off of birth control recently, and like doing a bean protocol for 3 months, and then seeing a lot of her skin clear, but not all of it. I'm just like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like I'm reading all these people's like success stories with it. And I'm like, they have a lot of problems to begin with. They're eating tons of nuts and seeds, tons of cruciferous, tons of raw greens. They're tons of PUFAs, pretty much, tons of estrogenic foods that are promoting estrogen, not supporting their thyroid function. And then of course, like implementing a ton of soluble fiber is going to bind to those bile acids and, help bind to some of that estrogen. But is it dealing with the estrogen or iron issues in their tissues? No. So when they stop eating it, they're probably going to, continue to have these issues. So fiber, yes, important. Get those good fibers in. Fruit fibers, root fibers, raw carrot salad, bamboo shoots, mushrooms. But if you're going to go out of your way to eat beans after every meal, why don't you just go out of your way to eat a shredded carrot with vinegar and oil on it with every meal? Like, that's what I don't understand. If you're trying to bind to estrogen, just shred a carrot with every meal and eat that, or do a bamboo salad. Like, do the things that are going to really bind to estrogen and see if that works. And then, sometimes beans can help bind to bile acids, but other ways that you can get rid of those bile acids and get new bile acids are like ox bile, grass-fed gallbladder, those types of things. So I see like where the effectiveness comes in, but I wouldn't want to be pounding all those phytates. What are your thoughts on water retention 2.5 years into anorexia recovery? Exercise or stress or lack of sleep seems to trigger bouts of water retention. Like there's so much there. Exercise or stress or lack of sleep. A lot of times with eating disorders, from what I've seen, I only worked with, I would say like a dozen women who just wanted to work on their like minerals and nutrients post-eating disorder. They have said that, and that's like in a one-on-one setting. I know there's a lot more that have taken Fully Nourished, but a lot of times their minerals are very, 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 very low. Calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, just all minerals in general needs to be replenished. And that is really something that is important. And exercise, stress, lack of sleep do affect like minerals. It also affects hormones. And I could see how a body that's been through that trauma like could be very sensitive to those shifts and those stressors. So I couldn't tell you like what it is, but that's kind of like, is it the body just being very sensitive to stressors? That would be my question. Are there any major downsides to taking letrozole, Femara for ovulation? I finally ovulated after 6 months, but my reproductive endo is suggesting Femara since they say my next cycle could be long. Also, do you know of any concerns of conceiving while on Femara? I just highly recommend doing your research and just looking into people's experiences with it. I've had a few clients that have taken it, and I have, I'm neutral on it. I'm not a doctor, so I don't say anything about medications in regards to like if they're good or bad, but just from my observations, I had, there's been quite a few women who have experienced like pain from it that have told me like I've been in pain ever since, like in their abdomen. So I don't know if that's a reported side effect. I honestly am not that familiar with the drug. But I have, there's been a few women that have really complained to me about taking it. So that's all my experience with it. So I just, with anything that we take, like I always just recommend, like read the whole insert, like go to the FDA's website and print the insert and read it, because there's a lot of women that are like, I wish I would have known like that was a listed side effect. Hi, Jess, in love with your course. Thank you for all your work. I'm glad you're liking it. Question, 2 weeks into Fully Nourished and feeling very tired after I eat. I feel that I have to take a nap. Any guesses? Cheers from Brazil. Are you doing a lot of starch in one sitting or a lot more carbohydrates than you're used to? Sometimes that just means we need to lower our carbohydrates a little more, up our fat a little bit. and play around with our carbohydrates. Sometimes when we implement carbs, even if it's just unknowingly too fast, our body's not processing them well because it's taken, it hasn't been processing them well for a long time. And then we just like add a bunch in all at once, and that can make us feel kind of sleepy. But sometimes if we've been running on stress hormones for a long time and we actually start to lower our stress hormones using nutrition, that can sometimes make us feel really tired. So those are like two possible things that I would look into. What brands of K2 do you recommend? I don't necessarily recommend like any specific brands. I know I like to use like Anovix. What's the other one? Thorne. Like they have a K2 drops that I like. But you're just looking for stuff that doesn't have a lot of additives. And a lot of vitamin K supplements are like 100 micrograms when, I like to take like about 1 milligram when I take vitamin K. So I don't know if this has anything to do with each other, but I had 2 raw carrot salads yesterday and I've pooped twice today. Also was really warm, like take my sweatshirt and shoes off hot. Woo woo! Yeah, you guys can use the raw carrot salad as a tool. Like some people I think they're like, how much do I need to have? And I'm like, well, it's a good idea to have at least like 1 medium carrot, but experiment with it. It's a tool to bind to endotoxin and bind to estrogen. And those are some like toxic compounds that have been like floating around for some time. So that's awesome. Yeah. Some people do like 2 or 3 a day and see big benefits from it. Or like we'll shred it with an apple and like split it into 2 servings or something. My toes can stay cold in my shoes for a while. Yeah, that happens to some people. Good temps and pulses all day, itself cold feet all the time, and hands half the day. Any thoughts? Sometimes it can take time. That has to a lot of times to do with circulation and pulses. And so, our core body temperature is not going to be the same as our extremity temperature. And so we want to get to the point where our core temperature is reflecting all throughout our body. But sometimes it's just a time thing. How long should it take to begin seeing balanced blood sugar levels eating fully nourished, looking to bring down fasting blood glucose levels? Fasting blood glucose is often due to stress hormones. So remember that, what we ate 10 hours ago, that's not what's affecting our glucose. We're actually eating our own tissues and eating ourselves in the morning, and that's why our fasting glucose is high. It's usually a function of glucagon and adrenaline and sometimes cortisol as well. And so we need to focus on getting our stress hormones down in the evening with our bedtime snack. So if our fasting glucose is high, we need to play around with our bedtime snack. And if we're waking in the middle of the night, oftentimes that's our liver running out of sugar. That wake up is our body saying, ding, 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 we're about to start eating you. And so if we're waking up between that liver time of 2 to 4 a.m., we've got to eat a snack when we wake up. And oftentimes our waking temperature our waking blood glucose, will be a lot lower because a lot of people are not correlating that they're waking up around 3 a.m., let's say, when their liver's running out of sugar, and they just try to go back to bed and then toss and turn for the next 5 hours and then wake up at 8 and now their blood glucose is out of control. That's just examples. And it's because you've been eating yourself for 5 hours. So we want to make sure we're preventing our body from eating itself. And that's usually happening in the evening. And that is a liver support issue. So we need to really focus in on that liver. Is 1 can of oyster a week enough? How much collagen is too much? Thanks. I think that's dependent on the person. I probably wouldn't go over like 5 to 6 tablespoons a day. And then like oysters, I think like 1 or 2 servings is plenty per week. For religious beliefs, I don't eat shellfish, oysters, etc. Is there any other foods I can eat to get the nutrients benefits from these foods? Thanks. Shellfish, oysters, etc. Yeah, just focus on the other stuff like whitefish, grass-fed beef, those types of things. What do broken blood vessels around nose mean and how to fix it? I know that Dr. Ray Peat talks about how like estrogen, and Dr. Hans Selye talks about this too, like estrogen can affect the capillaries. I know that when I was like, I always show this as like a example. It's covered in makeup kind of, but when I was on metformin and super estrogen dominant and like working out like crazy every day, this blood vessel bursted on my cheek. It's still there. I want to get it like salined, but that was when I was at my most stressed out state. And just interestingly enough, like that blood vessel just burst on my face. So I don't know, that just made me like pay attention to when he talked about how like high estrogen, high stress, high serotonin can cause like the capillaries and blood flow to be kind of, I guess, impaired. Like the capillaries are not working well as well. Sorry, my question got cut off. My skin still has hyperpigmentation and redness on my cheeks, and I still have dry scalp after several months of pro-metabolic healing. Yeah, sometimes that stuff takes a long time and consistency. It can take 4 years for polyunsaturated fats to completely get out of our tissues. If we're just eating pro-metabolically. I know a lot of us like expect these issues to go away overnight, but it really depends on our history and like what got us to the place that we're at. And sometimes it can take some time to go backwards, I guess we can say. Because think about it, if it took 15 years to develop, it's not going to be gone in 2 months. I know it can sometimes feel that way, but unfortunately it's not that easy. And that of course just depends on our history. And I know like some people see results very quickly. And I think some people are in a place where they are not as stressed out as some of us. So they see results very rapidly. But for some people, they're in quite a stressed out like metabolic state, and they need some time. I've noticed after eating coconut milk oil that I get a rash on my thighs and my ears get flushed. What could this be? Histamine issues. Some people are just very allergic to coconut or very sensitive to it. What do you think about the Integro Flourish for a probiotic? The only thing about it is it has Saccharomyces boulardii in it, and some people are very sensitive to Saccharomyces boulardii, which is a yeast. So if they are, it's not going to work out well for them. And I don't really like, I like supplements that are well formulated, and I know a lot of people see a lot of benefits with Flourish, but I think just being cautious with it is important, and just knowing your own constitution. I know you talk about how beneficial coffee is, but if one isn't quite ready to take on the caffeine, is decaf just as good? Well, the caffeine is an important part of it, but yeah, if you're not ready to take on caffeine, like decaf can be a great option. Just make sure it's Swiss water processed, because decaffeinated coffee can be decaffeinated using chemicals, and we don't want to be doing that. Is non-homogenized milk not a good idea for kids due to the possible bacteria? So only homogenized? I've heard mixed reviews. Homogenization has nothing to do with bacteria. They actually push the fat globules through these kind of like with oxygen so that they mix and the cream doesn't float to the top. So homogenization has nothing to do with bacteria and just has a lot to do with how the fat mixes with the water in milk. Maybe you're talking about pasteurization, which is where they heat the milk so that it's pasteurized. And that's just a personal opinion. That's just, a personal, like whatever you personally feel comfortable with. I'm really trashed and have been working on metabolism for 3 months now, and even 30-minute walk leaves me feeling crappy the rest of the day, and I won't sleep right. Is it best to avoid all exercise? I think you already answered your question there. Sometimes we just need to like sit out in the sun for a couple minutes, just get some fresh air, but not really push it. And like, I think sometimes we have this like all or nothing approach. Like we have to go on this like 30-minute walk or an hour walk. And it's like, if a 30-minute walk isn't working for you, then don't do a 30-minute walk. Do a 5-minute walk. If a 5-minute walk isn't working for you, then don't do a walk at all. And then wait another 3 to 4 weeks and then try a 5-minute walk. If a 5-minute walk's working for you, then try a 10-minute walk. Oh, 10-minute walk doesn't work. Go back to the 5-minute walk. Wait another 2 weeks. You know what I mean? Like, I think a lot of people just have like unrealistic expectations and don't realize how much their body has been through. I think we need to take a step back and remember, like, our body has been through so much depending on like what situation we're coming from. And we put our body through so much, and we need to acknowledge that. And sometimes rest is very important. Like that's what I'm doing right now. And I have to walk my dog. So that's the one thing that like I can't rest on. But in all honesty, I would probably be recovering a lot faster from my stressful situation, which I like to call it. This year, 2020 was my stressful situation, a lot faster if I didn't take Samson for a walk every day. But I have to take him for 2 walks a day. So I think like really like almost acting as if rest is work, because we will recover a lot faster. And then, what's 1 month or 2 months in the winter of not doing a ton of exercise to be able to like exercise again in 2 months? Why does the liver need vitamin K to function properly? You mentioned it in your liver detoxification Insta story. It's just a fat soluble vitamin that's super necessary for, protecting. When it comes to these fat soluble vitamins, they're really needed by so many membranes in the body, like so many cells in the body. But remember that vitamin K plays a big role in calcium regulation. And, if calcium is calcifying soft tissues, this includes like the liver, this includes like the skin, whatever it is, that's very stressful on your metabolism. So vitamin K plays a big role in just mineral metabolism, but overall a lot more. You can do some research on Dr. Weston Price's, I think he called it Factor X or Nutrient X. It was, he didn't really realize it was like a vitamin at the time. He just called it like Nutrient X or Factor X, and knew it was very important for like bone health, teeth health, just overall health. And people would degenerate very quickly without this X factor. Been eating metabolically for about 3 months, but still struggling with blood sugar. What do I do? More carbs, more fat? I know I'm getting enough protein. More fat. Try more fat. See where you're at. And then cut carbs a little bit. I know like people in the pro-metabolic community are super afraid of like restricting carbs. They were restricting carbs for so long, and then they're like, oh my gosh, like I can't lower the carbs. And I'm like, just try like a little lower carb, a little higher fat, try a little higher carb. But fat does help slow down digestion a little bit, in the sense of it just slows absorption of carbohydrates. So that would be something to experiment around with. What are some tips, resources you would give to parents to ensure their kids are healthy? I would read like Deep Nutrition, what's it called? Nourishing Traditions by Sally Fallon. Really good, like Nourishing Traditions for Baby and Kids, I think it's called, or Baby and Mama. Like really, kids should not be eating any differently. If anything, they should be eating more nutrient dense than we are. They're rapidly growing, rapidly developing. Their brains need a ton of nutrients, as do like their bones, their teeth. Like think about how fast they're growing. Their bones are shifting and expanding. They need minerals. They need those fat soluble vitamins. They need lots of carbohydrates, lots of protein. But the cool thing about kids is they are very intuitive. So they'll tell you exactly what they need. They kind of follow their cravings. Like you stick broccoli in front of them and they're not feeling like broccoli, they're not going to eat it. So, nourishing your children with nutrient-dense traditional foods is just as important as nourishing ourselves with the same things. You recommend introducing raw milk slowly. Hard to do when you're craving it, haha, but I understand. Would you also recommend consuming it on an empty stomach or with food? It just depends. Like, I don't really do well with like milk on an empty stomach unless it's warm. But I talked about this in Matt Blackburn's podcast when I went on last week. We talked about how like we only drink warm milk, just because I don't really think people with digestive issues do well with cold milk. I mean, think about it, like babies, cows, like we're all drinking milk warm, like body temperature. So cold milk can kind of like cool down digestion pretty fast. So I think warm milk is important, and I like to do it with food personally, but I think everyone's different. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with doing it without food. Can drinking alcohol cause constipation? Yeah, I mean, it depends on the alcohol, but yeah, I mean, it's usually pretty estrogenic, especially beer and wine. How does Fully Nourished look different for postmenopausal women? And are there lifestyle or health suggestions you recommend for them? I think like going slow is very important. Oftentimes, remember what we do in our 20s, 30s, and 40s is going to affect how our hormones function during menopause and after menopause. Postmenopausal women are super deficient in progesterone. And so that's one thing that I think is super important to actually like research supplementing. I don't think like, I'm not going to recommend you do or don't, but I think it's a good thing to research. And then as well as understanding that if you no longer have a bleed, there's no way to detox that excess iron. So maybe joining the magnesium advocacy group with Morley Robbins, or looking into Morley Robbins research on iron, just understanding how important it is to have, iron leaving the body, and focusing on copper and magnesium are very important factors. And then just being conscious of your thyroid health, your body temperature, your pulses. Oftentimes the thyroid takes a hit after menopause because there's no longer progesterone in the picture. There's no longer that monthly bleed to get rid of that excess iron. And so the metabolism slows down in the sense of all those factors are contributing to a slower thyroid. So just focusing on how much carbs you individually need and how many calories you individually need to thrive, and doing everything uber slowly so your body can get used to it. But I think everything in Fully Nourished applies. It's just you're no longer cycling, no longer making progesterone. And so that's the only thing you kind of have to decide, like, what am I going to do about it? Am I just going to let it be, or do I want to replace it? Thanks for all the help, of course. When and why should women use progesterone oil cream? Sometimes women are, haven't ovulated for a very long time, so they're super estrogen dominant and they're not making progesterone. So they're having a hard time getting out of this vicious cycle of stress. And so that's sometimes when they decide to supplement it for a little while to help with that estrogen dominance, to help balance out that estrogen and stimulate their metabolism so that they can finally get out of that stress, that vicious stress cycle. But read up on Dr. Ray Peat. He has a few articles on progesterone that are really helpful. Let's see. Oh man, I lost my place again. What's new? What is new? Are eyebrows that are thin on the outer side always a sign of hypothyroidism? Have had them for years. Think birth control and keto did it, but now I'm off it. My TSH and T3 look fine. Yeah, remember cellular uptake of T3, free T3, not just T3, free T3, is determined by potassium and sodium, which is sometimes why I think women post-keto still have that hypothyroidism of the cell, is because keto causes us to lose a lot of minerals very quickly. So potassium, sodium, magnesium, super important for thyroid uptake into the cell. And sometimes it's the only thing that helps clients or students get warmed up. And sometimes it just takes time for the eyebrows to grow back. But yeah, usually they say the third eyebrow of loss is a sign of a slow thyroid. But again, is that a rule? No. What does a normal cervical fluid pattern look like? Is it normal to have a long period of egg white cervical mucus? Well, usually there is a period of egg whitey cervical mucus. There's only 1 or 2 days where you can completely stretch it between your fingers. There's going to be a time where it's breaking, and then you're finally stretching. That's really your very fertile cervical mucus. I have a period of, I think, 4 days where it's pretty egg whitey, but there's that 1 day where you're going to get that really what they would say was stretch between your fingers. But yeah, everyone has a little different pattern. So it just depends on really you. And I think tracking your patterns and just being aware of your own patterns is more important than what is the pattern supposed to look like? Because some people get very little. Do you think there's a primary reason for panic attacks, anxiety, perhaps gut issues? I think it's low progesterone and poor blood sugar control. Yeah, I mean, I've had so many clients who have panic attacks that their life changed when they started ovulating again, got progesterone in the picture, balanced their blood sugar. I do think gut issues could play a role, possibly B vitamins, but I think a lot of it has to do with progesterone. What can help reduce yeast overgrowth? And just overall, I'm going to go back with 1 second. I think overall calorie intake is important too. Remember, if you're eating 1,500 calories, which is, the appropriate amount of calories for a 3-year-old, the body's breaking down constantly and it's having to figure out what to prioritize. And so that's why the nervous system is acting up constantly. But I truly think women are just eating way too little because they're trying to remain to this societal standard of lean, when in reality, women are supposed to have a belly, we're supposed to have more body fat, and that's actually what's normal or common. And we're so afraid of getting to that point, and we're over exercising, under eating, that our body's just breaking down. It's screaming at us. What can help reduce yeast overgrowth? Well, if you haven't seen my IGTV episode, I highly recommend reviewing that. I talk about how candida and estrogen are related and how thyroid plays a big role in controlling just bacteria in the gut overall, IgG. But sometimes like taking some helpful antifungals can be helpful, but it's not going to fix the issue if we're super copper dysregulated and we're super estrogen dominant. So we got to make sure we're getting plenty of bioavailable copper, plenty of magnesium, plenty of B vitamins. We got to make sure we're dealing with our estrogen dominance. If that doesn't take care of it, then sometimes some things like caprylic acid or FS722 or something like that can sometimes help. I've been paleo for over a decade and very excited to implement this way of healing. In regards to dairy, where is a good place to start? Like I talk about in Fully Nourished, when you're implementing dairy, you kind of have to just start with something that's probably pretty easy to digest and start really slow. Hard cheeses tend to be pretty easy to digest, like Parmesan cheese, traditional Parmesan cheese, or goat's cheese. Ricotta cheese and mascarpone are pretty easy to digest. And then like if you're going to just want to start with milk, doing a sip breakfast, lunch, and dinner for about 2 weeks usually allows you to start to like increase slowly. But the best tip is like go slowly over time. I know like a lot of us just, and this is common, like don't beat yourself up if this happens, but sometimes people are just like, I ate one bite of dairy and I just started craving it like crazy. I just started eating like gallons of ice cream. And I don't really think that's a problem. Sometimes it's uncomfortable at first, like there's some discomfort, but it usually goes away over time. So I don't think there's like a right and a wrong way. I think if like in a perfect world, eating a bite of Parmesan cheese with like lunch and dinner maybe for a couple of days and then maybe trying a few sips of milk. But you have to, when you're starting the milk, you got to do like sip, 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 sip every single day. And it takes about 2 weeks to get that lactase enzyme to really start kicking in. But yeah, just go slow. With the raw carrot salad, is it best to use orange carrots or are yellow and purple okay? I honestly think that yellow or white carrots are probably the best because the less beta carotene on them, the better. Clammy, sweaty, but also cold feet. Is that just a poor metabolism? Yeah. Because think about like what happens when you're in like an adrenaline state or you're really, really nervous before something happens. Like what happens? You kind of get like those clammy, sweaty hands and like you're kind of hot and cold all over. Maybe you blush or your face gets really hot and heated. That's like kind of stressed out 101. Do you think spots on teeth could be a sign of low calcium? I mean, I don't see why they couldn't be, but sometimes they're just stains or other things. Like that probably would be a good question for your dentist. Books and or authors you wouldn't recommend, haha. For finding you, I bought Jason Fung's books, threw them out after finding you. Yeah, I had so many like Bulletproof, Keto, like autoimmune protocol, AIP type stuff that I gave them away. I was like, I should have just thrown them away because I'm kind of like, I hope no one got those and implemented them. But yeah, I just like anything that's kind of extreme or like get fit in 60 days or my fat fasting or, like eat less, lose more, stuff like that. I'm just like, anything that's like eat more food, work out less, and heal your metabolism. I'm like, there we go. There we are. Anyone that's telling women to eat more protein, eat more carbs, eat more fats, lift weights, like those are all things that I'm looking for. And sometimes in books, like you're not going to find that you agree with all the information, but I'm looking for people that have an approach that is stop restricting and start providing the body with the building blocks that it needs. This can be really hard. Like I don't really like diet books in that sense. I like to kind of read about like different more in-depth things like minerals and stuff like that. Whereas like protocols and stuff like that, I don't know. I have like an affinity for Fully Nourished just because like I created it after finding that like 1,000 different things weren't working and were just too restrictive or too extreme or just like, were too much of a quick fix. So But I do like Matt Stone's like Eat for Heat books. Those Matt Stone stuff are pretty good. He's like the original inventor of the all-in. If you guys have ever heard of like the all-in, it's really popular right now amongst like YouTubers, like these fitness people that were restricting and binging for so long, and then they just like decided to go all in, eat as many calories as they wanted, so that they could eventually like lose the weight in a more like healthful way. Like Matt Stone was kind of the original inventor of this like all-in mentality. He was talking about it years and years ago. Favorite easy and quick snack ideas. Yeah, I mean, I like am not a big snacker in regards to like I don't like snack a lot throughout the day. I'll do like gelatin. I don't mean like I don't have like a set snack. I'm like, what can I eat with my coffee that's like substantial enough? So it's usually like fudge. I usually make like some type of like sheet cake, coffee cake, like brownies, something like that that I'll kind of like nibble on to have with coffee. I'm like always doing like chocolate milk. Gummies are like always on the menu, raw carrot salad. And then I tend to eat like larger meals at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But yeah, I usually do like Greek yogurt and fruit. That's a pretty common snack, or ricotta and fruit, or cottage cheese and fruit. What else do I do a lot of? Cheese. Like cheese, I do this weird thing where I take that hash brown that I talked about on my IG stories today. I make a hash brown and then I put like raw cheese on half of it and let it melt. And then I like fold it and it's kind of like this potato cheese omelet, you know? So that's what I've been doing for a snack a lot. And then like I got these golden kiwis at Costco that have been really amazing. They're like these fat kiwis, dude. They're big kiwis and they're yellow inside. And I've been doing those with like a latte that has a lot of like milk and collagen in it. So that's kind of been like my thing. It changes all the time, but a lot of times I'm just eating a smaller version of a meal as well. Random question, but was wondering what you use for laundry soap. I use Branch Basics for pretty much like all my cleaning products. It's just super easy because it's just like one bottle of concentrate, one bottle of their like oxygen boost powder, and you make like all your cleaning products. Soap, all-purpose cleaner, glass cleaner, like everything. So super easy. Best time to drink the adrenal cocktail away from food. I think it just is whatever works for you. I usually drink mine mid-morning just because I don't like to drink a big cold liquid with a meal, but I don't think it's like wrong to drink it with a meal. Coffee enemas saved me. Yeah, me too. I still love them. Can you explain balancing methionine and glycine when you eat gelatin with muscle meat? What amount of gelatin do you aim for? Should the gelatin be with the meat, or is it having it any time during the day? Okay, that is such a stressful question. Like, don't think that way. Just eat gelatin and eat meat and eat them together. And like, that's all you need to worry about. Like, don't stress about the amounts. Like, your body's not like 2 + 3. Oh no. Like, the numbers don't add up. Like, it's going to be okay. Just, cut a chunk of gelatin, have a cup of bone broth, just like aim to just get it in regularly. That's more important than stressing about the numbers. 2 bloating questions. Mango seems to make me really bloated more than other fruits. Is it higher in fiber than other fruits? Any other reasons you can think of why specifically mango might do this? Some people say it has a lot of yeast in it, like it actually like is a mold, which is what like makes it taste the way that it does. So that could be it. Also, mango is higher in FODMAPs. So those are like specific fibers that some bacteria eat. So maybe you have a specific bacteria that eats, one of the fibers found in mango. Those could be some ideas. But I would just say like, don't eat the things that make you super bloated. And over time, they probably won't make you as bloated. Bone broth also really causes bloating. I've wondered about histamine, but I don't notice any other histamine symptoms. Any other reasons you can think of for why it might be causing so much bloating? Are you putting vegetables in the bone broth that you're making? Or if you're buying bone broth, do they have other FODMAP vegetables like onions, garlic? Because sometimes FODMAPs are a problem for people with SIBO, and like can be a hidden place for FODMAPs. Pretty much FODMAPs are just like all those fibers found in plant foods that are prebiotic fibers, really. Will eating pro-metabolic, avoiding PUFAs, etc., be enough to heal insulin resistance, or do you recommend anything else or even specific supplements? I think it just depends on the person. I really like vitamin E. I like magnesium. I like inositol, avositol sometimes works really well for people, and like vitamin B3. And then like copper-rich foods like beef liver, but I don't think they're necessary. But if you have insulin resistance, like I highly recommend checking out Isaac Pullman. He talks a lot about like some wonderful tips for type 2 diabetes. And even though like, even if you don't have type 2 diabetes, all of his stuff applies to insulin resistance. So I find his tips very practical. Where would you suggest focusing when addressing eczema in a baby? I think I've heard you say eczema is connected to the liver. I would probably try to focus on like possible like nutritional things, like are they eating things that are bothering them? If that's like ruled out and you're just breastfeeding, then I would say like, okay, am I eating something that's maybe bothering them? Sometimes it's dairy, unfortunately, because you know that is usually imprinted. And then if that's still not helping, like sometimes I would maybe consider doing, I mean, you can't really do a lot for a baby. You kind of have to just like start to try to rule things out. And I don't know how old the baby is. Like this is not my forte of nutrition, but some people will do like baby safe probiotics. You just have to make sure the age is okay. Some people will start with certain foods like animal foods, and that will sometimes help with the situation. So really like doing anything that's going to focus on the liver, your liver is also going to help their liver. And then if that's not the case, then a lot of times it's gut related. And that's unfortunately like usually imprinted from mama. Not sure if I should work with you or Loren de la Cruz. Can you tell me the difference or benefit to working with you would be? I don't work with anyone right now one-on-one, so that if that makes your decision easy, hopefully that makes it easy. I don't work one-on-one with anyone at the moment, so the only options to like get access to my work is through Fully Nourished or Mend Your Cycle as of now, and that's probably going to change in 2021. But as of now, I'm not working one-on-one. If you notice spike in basal body temp around day 19 of your cycle and then higher temps for 14 days until period, would you assume you're producing enough progesterone? Any reasons to if you're not making enough? Yeah, I would assume day 19, 14 days until period. Yeah, if my luteal phase was lasting for 11 to 14 days, and I like didn't really have a lot of estrogen dominance like symptoms, and I felt like my temps were really good, like I would assume that I was producing a good amount of progesterone. Do you know why a pill bleed has been implemented with use of the pill when it's not a true period? They say that there's no medical reason for it. However, I do think that there's I think they know that a bleed is important. Like there's some doctors that I've heard have prescribed the pill to prevent issues. So I think like it just depends on the doctor, honestly. But I know that they kind of wanted to make the pill bleed look like a real period every 28 days. But I know like there's no reason to make it that every 28 days. But I think at that point, there was like, it was illegal, birth control was illegal. So they had to make it look like it was regulating the female cycle. So there's like a lot of history involved in it as well. I need to kind of brush up on that. What are your thoughts on deuterium in orange juice? Is this something that is a valid concern? Thank you for all you do. I've honestly never heard of that. Are you talking about like a heavy metal? I've never heard of that before. I'm really curious now. Hold on. A stable isotope of hydrogen with a mass approximately twice of that usual isotope. Yeah, no, I'm not worried about that. I mean, I'm wondering if that's like maybe something in the like a product of radiation, maybe, or possibly a something in the soil. Yeah, those are not things that like I like to worry about. I'm sorry, like human a human can only take so much pressure in life, and we need to stop worrying about things we cannot control. Do you think crystals can support healing? I'm not super into crystals. Like, I think they're rocks. I think they're pretty rocks, but like, I think they're rocks. On a hypometabolic state, what should be the ratio of macros when starting out? How to measure? What are the best carbs on hypoglycemia scenario? Can the carrot salad be added an hour later? I think the carrot salad should be fundamental. I talk about these in specifics in my course, Fully Nourished. So everyone's a little different, but I think like I talk about this in Fully Nourished, first figure out where you're at and then figure out where you need to go. Like, so, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. So first of all, just like stay where you're at, but shift your style of eating to pro-metabolic eating. Once you're there, you're like, I still don't feel that good. Then start to like play around with your macros. But until you've kind of switched what you're eating, you don't want to switch like all the amounts of what you're eating. Because if you switch too many things at once, you have no idea what is helping and what's hurting. But I think like a good place to start is wherever you're at. And then I think anywhere from like 30 to 50% fat, I think protein should stay kind of stable at like 20 to 25%, and then anywhere from like 30 to 50% carbs. So if fats are going up, carbs usually go down. And if carbs are going up, fats are usually going down. And you want to find that perfect balance of carbs and fats for you. Some people need a little higher fat at first for a while and slowly need to bring their carbs up. Some people need to stay a little higher fat and a little, maybe 35% carbs, 45% fat for the long term. So everyone's a little different, but I think protein should remain pretty steady and fats and carbs should change based on your needs. Not sure if this is odd, but for some reason, after I consume a meal with stewed apples with brown sugar, butter, and cinnamon, I feel so calm and relaxed. Haha. I had to mention it because I'm not sure if this is normal or means anything. That's awesome. I love finding meals like that. What did I eat the other day that I was just like, oh my gosh, I feel so good right now? Oh, I made like a roast, roast beef stew type thing with like carrots, potatoes. And I made one of those like hash browns. I'm obsessed right now. You guys know I get like obsessed and I just eat things like 3 times a day. But I've been making that hash brown, and I had like that hash brown with my like stew. And then I had some cooked apples as well. And I felt so like, I was just like so calm and relaxed. And I was just like, ooh, I feel so good today. So those kinds of meals are really important because they mean that that's working amazing for your body. We want those things that just make us feel warm and relaxed and satisfied and just like, oh, I feel so good right now. Those are the kind of meals we really want to be finding. That sounds really bomb too. I've never thought about doing brown sugar and butter. Oh, I'm doing that tomorrow with breakfast. What about diarrhea? What symptom would that be from? I've been eating pro-metabolically, and yesterday I was constipated, and today I have diarrhea. If it's all the time, we want to maybe consider like something we're eating's not working for us. Are you doing the raw carrot salad every single day? But if it's going between constipation and diarrhea, that means we've got to evaluate what's going on with our gut, because digestive issues are sometimes a little deeper. Any input on eye floaters? People have asked me about that, and I've seen, the Ray Peat forum is a fun place to go. It's quite interesting. Not always that informative, but funny. But sometimes you can find some nuggets of gold, or just like you kind of make some observations. And there are quite a few threads on eye floaters. And it makes me wonder if metabolic issues drive eye floaters. I think like obsessing about every individual symptom we're struggling with isn't always a good idea. If we're metabolically like really impaired, we're really stressed out, we're struggling with a lot of like hormonal imbalances, oftentimes we're going to have weird symptoms. And so sometimes we just have to focus in on fundamentals, and usually symptoms like that start to balance themselves out or eventually go away. And if not, like we want to explore that more, of course. I frequently have a swollen tongue with teeth marks, and sometimes it feels burnt almost. Any idea what could be causing this? Seems to get worse if I sleep badly. Some people say it's B vitamins. Some people say it's gut issues. Do you notice like scraping your tongue and practicing good like oral hygiene helps? Do you find that like B vitamins and getting them in consistently, like beef liver or bee pollen or things like that help? Those would be some things I would look into. Actually, now that I think about it, it's probably the dopamine release I'm getting from the stewed apples. Possibly. Dopamine is really interesting because anything that has like apple pectin in it will also help you produce butyrate. There's certain bacteria in your gut that will produce butyrate, and that can feel really good. That's like a metabolic fuel for some people. How long before you have clients do blood donations? I don't really recommend blood donations for clients. I think that's something that they will come across when they're feeling better, and they'll sometimes ask me about, like, should I, or they'll say like, I'm going to try to go give blood. Do you think it's a good idea? But I don't think it's a good idea for anyone who's super in a depleted state, not recovering after exercise well, not sleeping well. Like, I think people should be in a pretty good place before they're donating blood. Like, they should at least feel good. But that's just my personal opinion. I mean, you could, of course, like ask your doctor and see what they think. But I think it's a good idea to be like practice a little bit more caution. Can you go into more about Flourish, the strain you spoke about maybe not being good for people who are sensitive to it? What would those symptoms be? And would you recommend doing a probiotic at all? I'm very careful with probiotics. I think a lot of probiotics can cause more harm than good. Of course, that doesn't mean all probiotics are bad. There are some that are very amazing and effective. I just think it's important to like be informed about them, and a lot of people are not, and so they're taking a lot of histamine producing strains, and they're just making their issues worse. I don't know a lot about Flourish. I just know that there is Saccharomyces boulardii, which is a yeast, and if you look at research regarding Saccharomyces boulardii, a lot of times it will say that it's like a really beneficial yeast. It overcrowds like candida and things like that, but some people are really reactive to Saccharomyces boulardii. Like, they actually have like an immune reaction to it. So every time they consume it, it's causing kind of like their immune system to be on high alert. They're getting those histamine issues, like all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I don't think you're going to see like a necessary like immediate reaction, but you're maybe going to find that like your gut issues aren't reacting very well, or like you're starting to get intolerances to certain foods, or maybe like, you're getting those kind of histamine symptoms. Have you tried vitamin E? Usually excess iron. Eye floaters. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people will say that they have to do with like just kind of the regular, like I call them the metabolic bullet points. Like, how's your minerals? How's your fats? Are you doing vitamin E? Are you like just basics, like sleeping well, that kind of stuff. But sometimes it just takes time if you're doing all the bullet points. Can female pattern hair loss be reversed once you heal your metabolism and address your hormones? I'm not going to say yes, and I'm not going to say no, because I think it's really different for everybody. But I've seen a lot of people grow a lot of hair back. But it just, it's not like something where you're like, okay, 3 months in, like my hair should be growing back now. Like, where are we? Like, I'm waiting. It's one of those things where, hair follicles are kind of like little mini organs. They do a lot for us. And we have to kind of get to the bottom of what's going on. Like, why are they so stressed out? Why are they maybe not getting enough glucose? What nutrients do they need? Do we have like lots of gut stress? Prostaglandins, how's our thyroid, is our estrogen out of control? There's a lot of factors that affect them. And so it can take some time to get to the bottom. But if we just keep going and we're consistent, it's kind of one of those things where if we just don't give up, oftentimes that results in a good payoff. So I think it's very possible to regrow a lot of hair. And I think like everyone loses hair in a different way, but I've seen a lot of women grow a lot of hair back just from nourishing their body. Trying to heal metabolism for 2 weeks and then found out I'm pregnant. I always suffer with extreme morning sickness. How can I continue my journey, nourish my body, and not have strong detox symptoms? It's just don't do anything that like pushes a harsh detox, but nourishing your body usually is going to be okay. The body's going to detoxify as it deems necessary. But the most important thing with morning sickness is getting enough protein and balancing blood sugar. I know a lot of times like the nausea is so hard to push through, but usually when you're nauseous, it's too late. Your blood sugar is already imbalanced. So, a lot of times it's important to wake up sometimes twice a night and just eat something, and so that you're not waking up super nauseous and starting the vicious cycle all over again. And then some people will say like it's a like I know Dr. Ray Pete says it's a progesterone deficiency. I don't know if that's the only thing. I know some Dr. Tom Brewer has talked about how it's like a salt deficiency. So there's like a lot of different, and then there's like some people that are like, oh, it's a sign that like your thyroid's working great. And I'm just like, so yeah, I just think it's kind of like balancing blood sugar is the most important thing. How often can you eat beef liver if it's mixed in with something like meatballs? The recipe I use makes so many and I never want them to go to waste. Thanks so much. I always say like the equivalent to about 4 ounces a week is probably a good goal to have. Like you probably don't want to like be pounding like, 10 ounces of liver a week. But again, going by your temps, your pulses, like how you're doing, I think everything's kind of relative. But yeah, like usually around 4 ounces a week. So I don't know like how many meatballs you're clearing in a week, what you're putting in them, like if you're the one that's eating all of them, there's a lot of factors there. But I think like around 4 ounces a week is probably a good idea. Been eating FN for a while now and I feel great, but I seem to constantly be hot overheating. My cheeks are always red and I often feel sweaty. And any recommendations? Are you on like thyroid meds or anything like that? I would be wondering if there's something that is like making you overheat. If not, I would look into like are you working out? Like how are you sleeping? Because it's interesting, like sometimes, I mean, that kind of sounds like hyperthyroidism, but it could be just like adrenaline. It could be like an imbalance in minerals. There's a lot of different things. So maybe focus in on minerals as well. But yeah, I'm not really sure. And it's hard to know with just like limited information. What foods would you focus on during pregnancy? I'm pretty much like all foods that I already focus on, like getting plenty of carbs, plenty of fat-soluble vitamins from like beef tallow, coconut oil, raw dairy, what else? Like cocoa butter, chocolate, and then like protein, just getting plenty of protein, more protein than I eat now, probably like depending on what trimester, like a good like 130, 150 grams. I would do organ meats a lot, oysters, like just pretty much all fully nourished foods, like nothing that different, just more food in general. Like I'd probably be doing at least 3,000 calories a day. And then probably more once breastfeeding. But yeah, like just traditional foods. Nothing crazy. Lots of root vegetables, probably some leafy greens, like cooked really well in some fats, just for the folate. And then lots of minerals. Do you have any recommendations for a natural deodorant that actually works? I've been using Native, which I know is not like the best, but it seems to work really well for me. I know like a few people mentioned like Bluebird Naturals, which I'm not sure how well that works. I know some people have told me like Agent Nature works really well. Some people swear by like milk of magnesia and a roller bottle. So I think it just really depends on like one that works for you. But I'm going to share in the next couple of days the probiotic spray that I ended up fermenting and making for my body that I spray on after my shower to like replenish my skin bacteria. Is that extra enough for you or what? But I talked about actually probably more than a month ago now about making a microbial inoculant out of something called EM1. And I made a skin spray out of it. And so far it pretty much is like taken my body odor completely away. So yeah, I will share about that on my stories. I am obsessed with Forever Healthy Hairs products. Thanks for the recommendation, Jess. Me too. I like her stuff a lot. Are freckles the same as lipofuscin spots? My husband and his family have had them since being kids, and now my 5-year-old is starting them too. Thank you, Jessica. I don't think always. I think there's some people that start getting freckles from lipofuscin, but I think there's a lot of people who just genetically have freckles. There's a clear difference between like a weird shaped mole and a freckle. And also like, for example, like the freckling on my arms that I haven't always had, that's probably more lipofuscin. But if I was getting freckles when I was 4 years old, that would be a little different. Can you please share more dessert recipes? The fudge sounds amazing. Yeah, it's really Kitty's recipe for fudge. I mean, I do have a fully nourished fudge recipe. Fudge is very finicky, but like Kitty Blomfield is the queen of fudge. But yeah, it's just like a simple caramel fudge recipe, or yeah, you can usually get them on, find one on YouTube, but yeah, I'll share it. Have you tried Schmidt's? Any scent with magnesium hydroxide works well for me. Okay, cool. That's a good recommendation. Thank you guys for being so supportive of each other. Have SIBO and can't do almost any carbs because of acid reflux. Can I get my carbs from pure dextrose and white rice while beating SIBO? I mean, hey, I am the queen of experimentation. I think people should experiment, and I don't see why that wouldn't be bad. I mean, if white rice doesn't bug you. I know for me, when I had SIBO, white rice like made me bloat like a balloon. So I think it just really depends on the bacteria that is in the small intestine, and also how high up it is. Would take a K2 supplement while pregnant. I'm taking vitamin E, magnesium, and probiotics, no prenatal. I probably would take it a couple of times, like a week. I probably wouldn't take it every single day. Just with fat soluble vitamins, I'd be really careful, especially if you're like already getting a lot of K2 and just like, ghee, grass-fed butter, that kind of stuff. And then doing a little cooked greens will totally help make K, because remember, you make K in the gut. I would probably focus on more of like a natural vitamin K, like maybe just Thrives or something like that as well. What would you do for high mercury levels? It just depends on like, you always want to focus on main minerals first with that, but sometimes a binder can help. Like I really like, Pectosol C. I'm like, what is it called? Pectosol C can sometimes be an effective binder. I would probably just implement a binder and then focus on my first 4 level minerals: calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium. Anything that like chelates is usually pretty harsh on the body. Hold on one second. There's just some like weird people on YouTube that just like, oh gosh, just like, yuck. Let's do that. Okay. And first of all, like, are these higher mercury levels on an HTMA, or like high mercury levels that you've worked out with a doctor? If a doctor is diagnosing with high mercury, they're usually gonna like help you with the chelation of it. But if it's on an HTMA, oftentimes sometimes it's a good idea to go get that followed up with like a stool test, just to see what you're pooping out, because there are different metals that excrete in different ways. But usually something that's going to help bind is going to help take stress off while you're trying to figure out what's going on. Thoughts on properly soaked prepared oatmeal? I like it. I think it can be very, very great carbohydrate. These Q&As are gold. Thanks. I'm so glad. I've done these for so long. It's so crazy, but I love doing them. Do you think wearing contact lenses can be damaging over time compared to glasses? Probably, but I still wear them because I don't want to wear glasses all the time. And I like contacts better. Hey, Jess, if the morning temperature is around 97.5 and then drops down to 96.5 or lower midday, is this a sign that meals are lowering metabolism or that inadequate? I'm focusing on pro-metabolic foods. Probably need more calories overall in the first half of the day. I find that that's like a mistake that a lot of women are making. They're just not eating enough the first half of the day. So instead of seeing their temperatures slowly rise to hit its peak, like from 2 to 4 p.m. and then slowly start to decrease, they're just going like this from when they wake up. So usually it's just a need for more calories, more consistent snacking, just more consistency overall. But we want to see us slowly raise, because if our food is lowering our stress, so let's say we have a higher temperature before a meal and then our temperature lowers after a meal, usually we'll still rise after that. But if we're just seeing a slow decline over the course of the day, we need to really work on figuring out like what the first half of the day needs to look like for us. And sometimes it can just take time, but sometimes it takes us eating more calories. Don't be afraid of calories when you're trying to raise your metabolism. How many weeks or months does it take to see noticeable changes in vitals when adding in pro-metabolic foods and focusing on reducing stress? It's hard not to get discouraged with no changes. Yeah, I totally feel you. And I think like it just depends on the person. But yes, if you're not seeing any changes whatsoever, then sometimes it's a good idea to maybe start experimenting just with anything. Like just try a really big meal and see if that makes any nudge in it. Or try to like eat breakfast right when you wake up, like right when you wake up. Roll out of bed, go eat breakfast right away. So little things like that can sometimes make a big difference for a body that's very, very stressed out. And if we're not seeing any changes at all, meaning like, remember that temps and pulses are not the only changes we're striving to see, because numbers are fun and great and all that, but we're actually trying to see ourselves feel better. We're trying to sleep better. We're trying to have better cycles. We're trying to have better energy, better moods, better libido. Like we're trying to feel better. And so if we're not feeling better and we're not seeing our temps and pulses change, like nothing's changing, then at that point, okay, we need to try some, we got to mix it up a bit. But if we are like, actually I am feeling a little bit better, then okay, maybe things are slowly moving. So it just depends. But usually if nothing's changing and it's been months and months and months and months, that's when, okay, we gotta try something different. There's some like weird people on here, man. They like usually come in after the hour mark and you're just like, God. My temps were consistently high 96s and low 97s. Now during my last period, it was around 97.3 to 97.5. So I think I'm seeing some improvement. Yeah, that's amazing. Remember, like temps and pulses together are usually important because that's what helps you differentiate between your temperatures being risen by stress or your pulse, or is your temperature being risen by good thyroid function. Can you treat thyroid hypothyroidism without meds? A lot of people have gotten off meds just by eating pro-metabolically because they don't need them anymore. But I think it just depends on the person. A lot of times hypothyroidism is a conversion issue. It's not like your thyroid's not making hormones. It's actually that the body's not converting those hormones, and that happens in the liver. Or is it detrimental to your health to not take them while healing? I think it just depends. Like I've seen thyroid meds like help some people, and I've also seen them make some people worse because what they're doing is you're stepping on the gas pedal, but you don't have enough nutrition or energy in the tank, and so it's just burning you out, and it burns out the adrenals. So I think it just depends on the person. How to stop growing dark chin hairs as a woman. Balance your progesterone levels, balance your hormones, your sex hormones by nourishing the body, balancing the blood sugar, making sure you're ovulating to make progesterone, and supporting the elimination of estrogen once it's used by the body. Did it take you a long time to make your periods regular? I have PCOS and I finally got regular periods for once, but then I lost it due to stress. I ovulated after 6 months and now hoping it happens again. That's really exciting. Those small wins are amazing. I have never lost my period in the sense of like a lot of women with PCOS have lost their period or their periods were really irregular. Now, and I should say that after I got off birth control, I wasn't really thinking about my period all that much because I was like 18, 19, 20. Like I really wasn't paying attention, but I knew I felt really crappy. I wish I would have paid closer attention. But after my period started again, it pretty much was like every 28 days, but I wasn't actually ovulating. So, I truly like my periods have always been regular in the sense of like I've never lost it, but they have been kind of sporadic or I'm not ovulating. So it took me a while to regulate my cycles. If I was eating pro-metabolically, it probably would have happened sooner, but it probably took me a good 3 years to finally get like a period that was like every 28 days, ovulatory, all that kind of stuff. Mine fluctuates, so I'd rather not take them if it changes all the time. Yeah, that's a thing. It's like when we get tested when we get our thyroid levels tested, it's gonna change depending on like how high our cortisol is, how high our adrenaline is, like what our potassium levels are like. Like there's so many things that affect our cells' sensitivity to thyroid hormone. Remember, thyroid hormone doesn't stick around in the blood. That's the highway for thyroid hormone, but it's not actually where it ends up. It ends up in the cells. So I think like it just depends on the cell's sensitivity to thyroid hormone. And for me personally, like I never healed while I was on thyroid hormones. It wasn't like the thyroid hormones that was helping me heal or not. Maybe it was helping me feel better for a while, not feel so exhausted. Like I was just like, you know, if you've ever been hypothyroid, it's like almost like you're like in slow motion, like you're trying to walk underwater, but it didn't fix anything. I was on them for a long time. Also would love to get pregnant naturally with PCOS, the success stories you have, or would love any pregnant naturally with PCOS success stories you have. Yeah, I've heard, you know, there's so many pregnancy success stories like in Fully Nourished. I have so many clients that have gotten pregnant. Just like they never thought they could get pregnant, or they, you know, just kind of like gave up. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant. I'm shocked. It's been like 5 years since I even thought about it. So yeah, lots of women, almost to me, it's like, I don't, just because I know so much about the female body, and I don't ever think someone with PCOS can't get pregnant. That's kind of the thing. Like when somebody comes to me and they're just so shocked and so thankful, I'm of course like super celebratory with them. Like I'm so excited, but I'm also like, of course you could do it. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of numbers, in the sense of like, once the body has what it needs, it will do what it's made to do. It just sometimes takes time and consistency, which is the hardest part. But I'm never shocked that a woman with PCOS gets pregnant, because I just understand the female body. It's just one of those things where I think like, because women with PCOS are told they can't get pregnant, that's I think the problem a lot. Or it's just such a like well-known thing, like it's just hard for women with PCOS to get pregnant. Well, a lot of women with PCOS are not ovulating, which is the problem. So it's just about getting that ovulation back, nourishing, making sure you're making enough progesterone consistently. And at that point, it's just a numbers game often. But yes, it's very possible. In January, my TSH was 1.4, and a few weeks ago, it was 5.4. Well, I don't know your like story, but were you running off of stress hormones? Because adrenaline, cortisol specifically, can suppress TSH. So if you like are like, oh yeah, I was running off stress hormones for sure. So sometimes TSH can kind of increase. Kelp noodles, yay or nay? I just like, my question is like, why? Like they don't have any carbs, so that's not doing much for you there. They're kind of just like all fiber. So like why? Like I just don't know why someone would eat them unless you enjoy them. Go to liver detox stuff. Thanks for your lives. Always appreciate them. My husband knows not to bother me on Wednesday nights. Yeah, everyone knows not to bother everyone on Wednesday nights. Like this is our time together. Are cracked sores in the corner of mouth candida? Some people say they are. Some people get them. Like I used to get them really bad when I would eat gluten. So some people say it's like gut inflammation. I know a lot of people tell me that they get it when they eat gluten. So it's just like interesting. My niece has high lead and low iron. Any thought on this? Love Wednesday nights with you. Well, you know, so I'm like learning a lot from Morley Robbins right now, just kind of going through all his articles, and all of them are free, by the way. You guys can go through them. He has like 80 of them or something, but he talks about how there's like you can almost picture like a seesaw, and one side of the seesaw is iron in the blood, and the other side of the seesaw is iron stuck in the tissues, and the middle of the seesaw, the thing that balances it out, is ceruloplasmin, which is the enzyme, like the peroxidase enzyme that helps like regulate iron metabolism, which is run by copper and magnesium and other like B vitamins and other minerals. So oftentimes when iron is low in the blood, which they're often just testing ferritin, which is a horrible measure of actually testing your true iron levels, iron is very high in the tissues. And so your goal is to balance out that seesaw. Instead of being like, oh, the seesaw's low, like we need to supplement it up and cause more iron into the tissues, we need to figure out what's going on. Because if there's high heavy metal levels, oftentimes there's very low mineral levels. Heavy metals really deplete us of minerals like magnesium and things like that. So I would highly recommend looking into like the root cause protocol, or even like maybe talking to Morley Robbins, because he's kind of the master when it comes to like minerals, metals, and iron, especially with a child. Like I would talk to the best. 100% stress hormones. Got blood drawn around ovulation. Literally after an ultrasound, I was in a serious mood. Yeah, I can imagine. Like, ultrasounds are not, especially if they're PCOS ultrasounds, they are not fun. I feel you there. But yeah, TSH can either be raised by stress hormones or sometimes suppressed by stress hormones. So it just kind of depends. But yeah, that's why it's like not a good measure of thyroid health always, which is like always a wonder to me why they only test TSH. What do you cook on? Have cast iron, but now I'm wary of it because of iron overload. I cook on a ceramic Extrema pan, and then for like non-stick needs, I'll use a green pan, which is not perfect, but dude, do you really want to spend your morning every morning scraping eggs off of your pan? Like, I just don't. I just can't. So yeah, the ceramic pan isn't perfect, but I like it for most things. Yeah, the Extrema pan. And then I use like all-clad stainless steel, which some people freak out about stainless steel, but dude, like, I just don't. I used to stress about every little thing, and when you stress about every little thing, you're just an unhappy person, and you're also tend to be sicker. So, you know, like, we're all going to end up in the same place, which is dead. So I know that's like very, very gothic, but it's true. So can we just like not stress about every minute detail of our lives? What salt do you prefer? I usually use, oh my gosh, it's called Malden sea salt, the flake salt. But Morton's like kosher canning salt is actually pretty good as well. So I think it's just like a pure white sea salt is usually pretty good. Any coloring in this salt, so like grayer salts or pinker salts, like pink salt, that's iron. You know, grayer salts, those are other like contaminants, we could call them, minerals, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Like, don't stress out about your salt, for heaven's sake. But when you purchase salt, like, it's just a good idea to buy like pure white salts, because the less contaminants, the better. All right, you guys, I'll do a last call for questions. This Q&A went so long. Sorry for the people that are listening to it. And if nothing else comes in, I just want to thank you guys for joining me. I like these Wednesday nights. I know you guys enjoy them as well. And I'll see you next Wednesday.